Uh, we are live now. Welcome to UX Pro. Today, we're going to be talking about Elixir and security. And who's going to lead the session is Michael from Praxial. He created an awesome software about security specific, more specific for Elixir. And I'm glad to receive you here. So it's all about, you can tell anything that you want now.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show today. I appreciate it. So Praxial is a software security company. We make a product that is just focused on Elixir. So it does bot detection, sort of similar to reCAPTCHA or Cloudflare bot defense. And it can also scan your project for vulnerable dependencies or Sobelow findings, for example, and then aggregate those through like our backend platform. So for compliance requirements, if you have security standards, that's a really common reason that you'd want to do that. The company also offers security consulting, specifically just for Elixir and Phoenix applications. That's our specialty. So it's really cool to be talking to you today, and nice to be on the show.
Awesome. Could you tell me a little bit more about security and Phoenix? One of the things that I came across a couple of months ago was about timeout session with Elixir, specifically with live view. Could you give me more examples how to use Praxial or prevent this way as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have an article that was published on the blog. I'll link it in chat here, and you can put it in the show notes. But it's on the Praxial.io blog called Securing Elixir and Phoenix Applications, 5 Tips to Get Started. So this is just like kind of an introduction to Elixir and Phoenix security. So if you're watching this, you probably work in an environment you have a production web application that handles customer data. And if it's on the public internet, it's really important to think about how our attackers do. Even if it's a small company, people often say that, we're not a big business. How are people even going to find us? And one trick that people do is they use certificate transparency logs. So when you register for like a TLS cert on your website, to get HTTPS, when that happens, there's a publication event that, attackers like monitor for. So as soon as you get like a TLS cert on your website and you start seeing, people scanning for vulnerabilities, that's just one example of how they find it. But even if you're a small business, you need to kind of sort of be aware of this. So the article that we're talking today, it's just going to be 5 introductory examples, and I'll start with the first one here. So my first kind of recommendation is, if you're interested in this, the Erlang Ecosystem Foundation's Security Working Group, which is a really fantastic group of really smart people that are just focused on Elixir and Erlang security. They publish a guideline for secure coding and deployment hardening in Elixir and Erlang. So my recommendation is to just go on the website and read that guideline, because it talks about, various security problems that are specific to Erlang and Elixir. I'm curious, are you familiar with the document at all?
No, I'm not. I never heard about that. You are the first person that is introducing it to me.
That's good, because a lot of people have experience with Elixir. They're doing a lot with it, but they don't know about it. I feel like unless you're really into security, it's hard to get the word out. So that's why I like talking about it and recommending it to people.
Awesome. So I saw that the link that you posted in your article, they are talking about security coding recommendations like atoms, serialization, spawning, protecting.
Exactly.
Oh, it looks great. I will take a look. But would you like to talk about the most important about this article that you highly recommend for, like me? I started knowing security from Praxial, but for example, I'm seeing the article, but could you recommend me, for example, I'm seeing the first topic, and also I opened the security coding and deployment guideline. Which one is the most important here? Can I share my screen?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so let me share my screen. This one. Oh, there you go.
Nice.
And right here, I saw that. And we have this one. And I'm seeing a lot of topics, and I know that I need to study a little bit more. But which one would you recommend me to read first here? All the guideline or just one specific topic here?
I'd say they're all very important, and it just depends on the requirements of your software. So if it's, let's say you have, a web application and it has to be online 24/7, like it can never go down, or you're going to lose, hundreds of dollars per minute or something. In that case, atom exhaustion, the first example there, is probably the most important, because if you have, it's number one right below secure coding recommendations, preventing atom exhaustion. Yeah, there we go. So essentially what this one is about is, in Erlang and Elixir, atoms are never garbage collected. So once you create a new atom, it just exists in the Erlang runtime, and you never get more of them. So if you have code in your Phoenix application, like let's say somebody posts like a JSON blob or something, and that results in 100 or 200 atoms getting created, that could be a major problem. Because even if the attacker isn't intending to do a denial of service on your system, it could be just a normal user that screwed up their code a little bit. This can lead to your entire system crashing, which is really rare in Erlang, because the whole thing is sort of designed to stay online. So, and people might be choosing Elixir and Erlang because of that requirement. So that's why I like to mention this. It's also very straightforward to find these vulnerabilities in your own code, because the patterns are so common. You can just search for the various functions, or you could use a tool like Sobelow, which that could be a good segue into what Sobelow is next. But Sobelow is very effective at finding that specific problem.
Got it. Good to know it. Would you allow me to maybe cut this piece of video and then share like a short on my YouTube later?
Yeah,
and mention your YouTube channel. Awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
I will mention that as well. Thank you so much.
For sure.
Is it okay if I stop sharing?
Yeah, that's all good.
Okay. So you mentioned about 5 topics, and you mentioned about the Sobelow as well. Things that, another question, when I always start Sobelow on my Elixir applications.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I notice is it's always start with, I think is CFRS problem, and I just ignored that. Would you recommending, this is a side question, default configuration using Sobelow when we're talking about security?
Yeah, it's really the tool I recommend the most, I'd say. You said you have it's a SSRF. So let's back up and explain for listeners, if you're not familiar with Sobelow, or cross-site request forgery is what that acronym means. So Sobelow is a static analysis tool, which means it looks at the source code of your Phoenix application, and it doesn't run it dynamically or send input to it like a fuzzing framework would do. Rather, it just looks at the source code of your Phoenix application, and from that source code, it determines if certain vulnerabilities exist, like that denial of service with the atom problem we just talked about. So it was created specifically for Phoenix. I don't know if it's the only static analysis tool. There might be other ones, but it's definitely the most popular, and it seems like it has the most support. So that's why it's so highly recommended. The creator of Sobelow, Griffin, he also gave an ElixirConf talk in 2017. The title is Plugging Security Holes in Your Phoenix Application. I'll just link it right here so you can put it in the show notes too. But if you're interested in security, I highly recommend watching it, because he talks about downloading projects from just GitHub and then doing a security audit on them himself. And he talks about what kind of problems he saw, in just Elixir code bases. Like what if for specific vulnerability, like how were people introducing it into their code? And I think that's something that's super valuable to know about. So the question you had was about cross-site request forgery. Is that correct?
Not exactly. I think it's CSP. For example,
CSP,
every project that I start, and I always install the Sobelow. But two questions that I always have when I start my Elixir application is that by default I got problems with CSP.
Yes.
And I don't know. I just ignored that. Would you recommend me to do that? Would you recommend me to do?
It depends. So CSP stands for Content Security Policy. It's a security control in web browsers to stop cross-site scripting attacks. So when you create a new Phoenix project and you install Sobelow and then you run it, it generally always reports that, and then it also usually tells you about your HTTPS configuration.
Exactly.
So if those things aren't relevant for you, like let's say the application doesn't, take user input and show it back to users, so maybe cross-site scripting isn't relevant, you can do marked as false positive. Sobelow has really good support for that, which is something I think was a great design decision. So you can run a Sobelow command and then it creates a new file with some hashes, and then that finding will not show up anymore. If you do have an application though that's on the public internet, let's say it's like a social media website where people could post like a comment and that's getting rendered, you do want to really be concerned about XSS. And in that situation, I think like configuring CSP policy is worthwhile. But it's not like a really satisfying answer, because you're going to hear me say it depends like 20 times, I feel like, on this call. But that's part of the problem with security, is that it really depends on each situation.
Got it. Okay. Awesome. Thanks for explaining that.
Yeah, for sure.
Good to know, because most of the time when I say like CSP problem and HTTPS problems, I just ignore that, and I didn't have time to study to say, is that a good decision? And now makes me feel more comfortable. Like it depends.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So you mentioned, I never heard about the mix audit, which is, could you explain a little bit more for us?
Yeah. So mix audit is a really nice mix task to include in your project. What it does is it goes to GitHub's vulnerable dependency database. So there's basically an index of all of these vulnerable dependencies that GitHub hosts. This pulls down that data, checks your project's dependencies, and determines if any of your project's dependencies have vulnerabilities in them. So if on this page, could you search for mix? So there's mix audit, and then there's hex.audit, which is a little bit confusing. But yeah, it's like hex.audit. Oh, one. Yeah.
This one?
Yeah, so this is an important thing too. Hex audit finds packages. It's built into the Hex editor, or the Hex package management system, not the editor. So it looks for packages that have been marked as retired, so they're no longer receiving support. So the difference is, like a vulnerable dependency, someone found a security problem with it and reported it, and there's probably a better version that doesn't have that problem if you upgrade, and that's why you care about it. But for Hex audit, that's just looking for packages that aren't even supported anymore, which you should also kind of be aware of. If you're using a package, for example, like an HTTP client that isn't receiving updates, it's a good idea to just get it out of your project. Even if there's no security problems with it today, the concern is, what if, let's say 6 months from now, there's a big security problem with it, but there's nobody maintaining it. Now you have this problem in your code base where you have to rip it out, kind of at the last minute, where if you did it 6 months ago, you could probably plan a little bit better. So all three of these, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, thank you for explaining that.
Yeah.
You can go ahead. Sorry.
No. So yeah, all three of these, Sobelow, Mix Depth Audit, and Mix Hex Audit, I recommend running all of them in your project, either in your CI/CD pipeline, or we actually just released this feature with Praxial IO. So if you're in an enterprise environment where you have, HIPAA or SOC 2 or all of these security compliance requirements, you can actually just run a Praxial task. Yeah, if you go to the Praxial homepage, yeah, click on there. It's like the party poppers. Yeah, I now seen Elixir vulnerability scanning. Sorry, scroll up. It's like the black announcing. Yeah, right there. So this is the announcement blog post. Essentially, you now have a Praxial like mix task where you run it and then it scans for all three of these, puts it in a nice format, and yeah, just scroll to the bottom because that's how you can like see how it. Yeah. That's just like how to install it and what the scan looks like.
Got it. That's super nice.
And then you get like a little, yeah, exactly. People love this, especially auditors, because they want to see, okay, so you have all of these scanning in place, but when was the last time it ran? Like, do you have a record of the successful scans? Like, what if it failed? Or, how many vulnerabilities did you have 6 months ago compared to now? With Praxial, you get this sort of nice record. You get like a graph. You can view the history of all the scans.
Got it. Looks really nice. And generate this report for us, right?
Yeah, I love exactly. It.
I know that we have, when I go to pricing, I'm gonna try for 30 days probably, exactly. and probably record a video because I love it.
Yeah. And no credit card required too.
Yeah, that's really important even for developers. I like it. I definitely will try that. Looks really nice.
Thank you.
So like make my life easier. Like I don't need to run those commands. I just need one mix Praxial and it's gonna work.
Yep, exactly.
Awesome. Congratulations. Looks really nice feature.
Yeah. So that launched pretty recently. Praxial is originally, when we launched, it was only bot detection. And then I noticed, we have, this agent installed. We can also pull vulnerability data, and people really care about that. So that sort of motivated the security scanning as well.
Awesome. I like it. So do you want to talk a little bit more? Do you want to explore a little bit more about the mix audit, or want to move forward for the harden your application against boot attacks?
Yeah, I feel like we covered it very well. We can go to the bot attacks.
Okay. So, this one?
Oh, number 4. That's
okay.
Yeah. Harden your application against bot attacks. Yeah. So I don't know if the viewers can see it, but essentially, if you have your application on the public internet, and you could ask yourself questions like, can people send like a login attempt to the application? Or can they enter a credit card? And if they do, if like the answer to those is yes, you have to be concerned about bot attacks. So I'll give an example here with the credit card problem. So let's say you have, your software and you think, I'm not worried about bots because to create an account, you have to put in a credit card. So you think only good, users would have access to a credit card. So that's like kind of my bot detection, right? I've talked to a few people that had that sort of view. The problem, though, that you'll run into is there's people online who do credit card fraud professionally, and they'll have a batch of about 10,000, let's say 10,000 stolen credit cards, and they need to figure out which of these credit cards works, like you can make a purchase with. So putting them all on plastic and going to like a store and pulling out 500 credit cards, the cops are going to show up pretty soon. So they go online and they do like little small purchases. Big websites, like the big retailers you go, they're very aware of this problem and they have really good fraud detection in place already. The problem though is new companies, like if you've just launched your new startup and you have payment verification in it, you probably don't have defense against this yet, unless you're using Praxial, of course. But the problem is people will register for hundreds of new accounts using bots, and then they'll make small purchases, like let's say you have like a $5.99 tier or something. And then you'll wake up and you'll see, oh, I had 500 new customers. This is great. Until you check your logs or you get an email from Stripe and they're banning your account or something, which is a horrible day. So it's possible to detect that. That's something Praxial.io does. It allows you to throttle login attempts or catch bots that are doing this. A common defense against this that everyone is probably familiar with is reCAPTCHA, where you have to pick out all the photos of fire hydrants or something, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of terrible though, because it's frustrating if you're going to create an account somewhere but you can't solve the CAPTCHA. A lot of people just give up and don't even bother using it. So
yeah, and seeing the article. Go ahead. Okay.
So, it's actually funny. Yeah, that the thing you clicked on, that was credit card fraud affecting a small business. Yeah, the Candy Japan one. The person who runs it, he was blogging about dealing with this problem. So
this
the second one, the carding for the payments function. Yeah, that one. There you go.
Okay.
So yeah, check out this article to read like what it feels like. Yeah, you see like the spike, and it's a horrible day to deal with if you're running a business.
God, looks great. Also, but we have it already for Elixir.
Yep, exactly. So Praxial.io does this. There's other alternatives too. You could do open source rate limiting. That's what Tyler Young published on the Felt blog, which was really cool. I don't recommend reCAPTCHA because it's really easy for like attackers to bypass it, and it also just hurts your user experience and in some cases your profits, because people who want to give you money, they might decide to not use your website because the CAPTCHA is so annoying.
Got it. You should say that. And here, yeah, thank you for the explanation. Makes me feel aware about security now. Okay. Do you want to go for the next topic, or do you want to say about security?
I think that's good. Yeah, we can go on to the safe URL library now.
Okay, sounds good.
So yeah, for the final example, server-side request forgery. It's like another acronym. I know there's so many acronyms with security people, it can be annoying. The problem with this one is, okay, so I'll give an example of how the vulnerability works. Let's say you're building, your application in Elixir and Phoenix, and it's sort of similar to Slack, where there's like a chat function. And when you paste a URL into Slack, like a Twitter thread, Slack will load a preview of like the tweet or something. So if you think about like, how would you build that yourself? You probably think, okay, we have to take the URL, parse it, do an HTTP request to like the Twitter server, get the tweet, format it, parse it, and then put it, you probably use LiveView or something now. But that's the design of it, is a user puts in a URL, your application does like an outbound HTTP request with it, and that's how it's working. The problem with that is modern cloud hosting providers, like the servers on AWS or Google Cloud, they have an endpoint where if you do an HTTP request to it, it will return your server's private key, like the secret to access all of your data that's stored in S3 or to log in to the server, something like that. So you can kind of see how the attack works, where instead of providing a Twitter URL, the attacker provides the internal endpoint for that server. Your application does the request, returns the data, but it's not a Twitter thread. It's now like the private keys for the server. So this is a pretty common problem. The engineers at Slab actually released an open source library for Elixir, which I think is great to see, called SafeURL. and it's designed to stop this attack, this HTTP request to that endpoint that returns the private keys.
Got it. It's important every create using this URL.
Yeah.
This. Okay. More. So let me check here. I didn't know that. Just create my application, deploy it, no taking security. Thanks for sharing those information.
Yeah, for sure.
So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the summary of it. If you want to, if this, it's a lot of stuff, this is kind of just like a framework for getting started. We also offer Elixir security consulting. You can send me an email too. My email is michael@praxial.io. I'll put it in chat and you can include it in the show notes too.
Okay.
michael@praxial.io. But feel free to send me an email. I'm also like the Praxial website is on Twitter or Mastodon now, but you can get all the links online. Just feel free to DM me. I'm pretty accessible if you want to chat about Elixir or Phoenix security.
Awesome. Good to hear that. I'll take a look in some of these articles and probably produce some contents and mention the Praxial as well. I really appreciate you today, Michael, and your presentation about security.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on the show. It's great to talk about this with the community.
Thank you so much. Thank you, guys, and bye-bye.
Thank you for watching.